Hi, I'm Dr. Kyla, paediatric dietitian, fussy eating specialist and mum of two. I'm the founder of the online mealtimes memberships that help parents just like you experience a confident and guilt-free way of feeding children. I'm also a business owner, a hot cross bun lover, and my superpower is finding things that you cannot live without. In this podcast, I'm talking about feeding your family, along with a random selection of topics that tickle my fancy. Welcome to Mealtimes with Dr. Kyla. Hello and welcome to Mealtimes with Dr. Kyla. Today's guest is Jono Steedman, accredited practicing dietitian and founder of Bite Me Nutrition. Jono is one of my favourite dietitians on Instagram. He's funny, he's highly experienced, and he's not afraid to call out nutrition misinformation or just general rubbish that he sees online. Following him is highly entertaining and informative, and I was super interested to hear about his experience of feeding his kids because I know he's had some mindset shifts along the way. So let's do this. All right. Welcome to the podcast, Jono. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. All right, let's get started with the entree. So for those of you who've listened to a few examples of my podcast so far, this is about my guest's experience of mealtimes as a kid. So maybe, Jono, if you can tell me a little bit about mealtimes in your household when you were growing up.
Yeah. Firstly, love the entree main dessert. So good. Any food pun, I'm here for. I was super lucky growing up, and I don't think it was until I started working in the nutrition space that I realized just how lucky I was with how I was exposed to food growing up. Lots of food variety, lots of fresh food, lots of different colors. We grew up on 5 acres, which is like a nice amount of land. So there was a little bit, we grew some veggies, grew some fruits and things. I wasn't homeschooled. Not that there's anything wrong with homeschool, but
I was going to say, this sounds very romantic.
Sounds like it's leading that direction. Didn't grow up in Byron Bay. Again, nothing against
people.
Oh,
there you go.
But outside of that, went to a state primary school. But there was just a bit of, we'd go and pick some fruits and veggies and we're always cooking with those. But also, I don't recall there being, we had, sugary desserts and we had, quote unquote treat foods. We had all of those sorts of things. I don't think I had Maccas till I was in high school, which is a bit disappointing, but it's okay. I'm making up for it now. But outside of that, just really lots of cooking. I was, I'd have to cook a meal a couple of times per week. As I got older, I was always involved in the cooking. Mum and dad both cooked, and just like I said, very lucky. Dad was a PE teacher. Both mum and dad were pretty active and into health and nutrition anyway. And somehow I think they dodged most of the terrible food messaging that came out in that time, or at least they didn't pass it on to me.
That's amazing. Really, that time it was so pervasive, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, hey, mum and dad, if you're listening, they've got a few questionable nutrition books on their bookshelf at the moment, but overall, I like I said, I didn't really realize it at the time because I think, like most people, you just kind of think your upbringing is normal. Yeah. But having worked in nutrition and being exposed to what a lot of other people have, like the food messages they've been exposed to, it's made me more and more grateful that my parents have, set me up with that pretty fortunate foundation.
There's not a lot of unlearning that you've had to do.
No, not at all. Like I said, I had to seek out, McDonald's by myself. Yeah. But
what a challenge that must have been, really.
It was, it's been a burden, but I've worked through it. But honestly. So boring. I remember mum and dad cooking. I remember me being involved in cooking. I remember there always just a nice mix of home cooked. It was probably a lot of home cooked things. I don't remember too many things from packets. I remember we had dad would make homemade juice with the juicer and all those sorts of things. But
what was your go-to honestly, as a kid when you were cooking? What was your signature dish?
Oh, I can't remember. I remember a few signature dishes of my parents.
What were they?
Sausage. Mum made a very mean sausage casserole. It was so good. I keep trying to get the recipe off her. It was amazing. I've tried to replicate it and have just not even got close since. So that was pretty awesome. Dad was big into curries.
Yep.
Which I was, again, very lucky. Yeah, just and then we'd have, white fish with some lime fish sauce Thai kind of dressing, and then we'd have apricot chicken, and then we'd have sausage, apricot chicken, sausage casserole, all of the
sounds pretty
80s and 90s Australian. Yeah.
That's a bit of
And
a
mum
bit
had the
more.
cake book as well.
Oh
You know,
yeah,
the Women's Day. Was it Women's Day? Women's Weekly cake
Women's
book.
Weekly.
So yeah, each year we pick a cake out of that, of course. Um, so yeah, just really lucky.
Would you say that you were quite an adventurous eater as a kid, or were you more of a fussy eater?
Definitely adventurous. I can't recall any stories of me being picky. I there's pretty much nothing I won't eat now, and I don't think I ever kind of had. But myself and my sister, I've got a younger sister. We're both pretty broad, and I don't recall there ever being anything. I remember hearing about a story where apparently I almost put Sizzler out of business because kids eat free. If anyone remembers Sizzler, are they still around?
Oh, well,
I think
ours
they're gone.
closed in
Hey, or they
Perth
might.
a few years ago.
Yeah,
Last one,
I think
yeah.
they're all gone, which is a
That
shame.
cheese
But
toast, like, oh,
oh, and the potato scallops or potato skins,
the
far out.
potatoes,
But
one of
yeah,
my
so
tricky foods. I would never have eaten the potatoes, but I was into the soft serve ice cream and the make your
oh
own
yeah, that
nachos. That
dessert
was
bar.
a big one for me.
Yeah, bring
Uh-huh.
Sizzler back. But yeah, no. By all reports, I ate everything and had a huge appetite, and that hasn't changed. Ooh,
Well,
pardon
there
me.
you go. And that kind of brings us to then the main section when we're thinking about your experience as a parent, so raising
Mm,
two kids. What's kind of
yes, yes.
meal times like in your household now?
Yeah, so I have a 3-year-old son and a 6-year-old daughter, and overall, we're doing pretty well. I think again, pretty fortunate with my kids aren't overly fussy. We try and this is not a planned segment, but absolutely, a lot of the things I've learned from your content around, same food, same time, and just making sure that I'm not hung up on how much of something they eat or whether or not they eat certain things, but just making sure that continually just sort of exposing them to those foods. And I think doing all of those things, and again, just the fact that myself and my partner's diet is very broad. The kids kind of had no choice growing up, well, still growing up, and so we certainly have staples, and we have meals that they prefer and meals that are always questionable. And so I try and time the questionable meals for earlier in the week and try and keep the safer meals for sort of the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday nights. We certainly didn't eat together enough as a family, probably in the first year or two, just with my business and, my wife working and kid life. I think
Tricky in
dinners
those
for
very
adults,
first years, though, isn't it? Like when you've got a
totally.
baby
Yeah.
who's maybe going to bed earlier or eating a bigger meal in the day, it is really tricky to establish that kind of same food, same time then. I would be the
100%.
same.
Yeah. And yeah. And I think we used dinner as a bit of a, um, that was the, the finish line. Like I'd collapse on the couch or collapse in bed with dinner, and that meant I was done for the day. And so having dinner at 6 with the kids and then I'm not done for the day was a bit of an adjustment. And I naturally prefer to eat later, and so
What about now with
it's
kids? What
that.
time do you tend to eat dinner?
About 6:30. So we try and do baths first, probably mostly because the transition from dinner to bath was uh, sending us all to an early grave. So we do baths first and use dinner as a bit of a carrot to get them in and out of the showers and the baths.
I hear
And then
you.
it also meant that, and it meant, when they take 90 minutes to eat dinner, at least they've already showered. So, and then it meant that I could naturally eat dinner a little bit later rather than
Yeah.
like 5:30. So yeah, I mean, both my kids are reasonably unfussy. Mashed potato, just potato in general, actually, which I find, I don't know, that was not what I thought was going to be normal. I thought potato was like a core food group for kids.
See,
But
I feel them with
it,
myself. Potato has never been a preferred food for me.
see this, I was like close to getting a DNA test when they didn't like potato, because yeah. Although my wife's British, so she loves potato as well. So I don't know where these kids came from, but like even hot chips, like we'd get fish anytime we get fish and chips, we'd get fish and chips, some calamari, and a salad, and they would destroy the fish, the calamari, and the salad, and then not touch the chips. So I don't know what's going on there,
Like
but
it. I like it.
yeah. But the classics, spaghetti, all of those sorts of all in together dishes, wraps, anything that you can put in a wrap. They're a huge fan, or pizza. Especially I think they're both definitely at the age where they're quite capable of building their own wraps and building their own pizza. And I'm sure this is not news to too many people, but if you engage the kids in said dinners and making of it, they're going to eat way more of it. So we've been doing a lot of those sorts of things, which has been really fun. And I think it's encouraged my daughter. I think my daughter hit a bit of a picky phase in the last sort of 12 months. Not crazy picky, but things she was eating, she sort of stopped eating. And just by getting her involved in making her own dinner a little bit more and just leaving those things as options, she started to include them again more frequently, which has been pretty cool.
Do you think
Because
that
she is
coincided with school for you guys?
actually, yeah, probably. Now that good, yeah, it's you. Do you know a few things about this? I feel like
Right,
you're quite,
I kind of
yeah,
went there. Yeah,
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
it's
definitely.
so
Yeah, so
common.
she's grade one this year. So we do prep then grade one, which I think you guys do. You kin
Yes, we're the same.
do
So last year
preschool.
was 5 days
Okay.
of school a week. Yeah,
Yeah, she was like
pre-primary.
uniform teacher 5 days. Like she was still at school. So
Yeah,
yeah, so this is like her second year of school.
yes,
And
we're in the
yeah, no,
same.
you're okay. Cool. Did you find it with yours? Did she kind
Definitely,
of shift a
yeah.
bit?
And I think what we see, like with, I've worked in a clinic for a number of years and I don't now, but almost all kids have periods when life gets hard, that something goes backwards. And for kids, it can really commonly be eating. Like they get more kind of
Mm.
specific about how something needs to taste or how it needs to look, or just like by the time they get home for dinner after a day of school and they're 5, they're just wrecked. And so there's a sense of control around saying, I'm not going to eat that, or I only want it with cheese and I don't want this thing that, feels a bit weird today. And it's hard not to fall into a pattern, I think, for lots of families to kind of come down on that to try and, fix it in the moment. But I think you do find if you can write it out and you can give them options, you can give them that sense of choice, that actually things write themselves on their own when they're more settled and when they're kind of more accustomed to full-time school and all of the things. Like you'll find by the end of term, often eating can go backwards and then it gets better over the holidays and then it gets worse again in term.
Mm. Yeah, I think for me that is a lot of unlearning.
Yeah.
Just in terms of um, it's kind of counter to me. It's counterintuitive. The whole no, you need to eat that. You need to keep eating that. You were eating that, rather than just going, oh, okay, well that's your choice. Like not even acknowledging and saying that's your choice. That sounds so passive aggressive. But
Yeah.
internally
Whatever you
saying
want.
that, yeah, internally saying that and just giving my daughter the space to make that decision. And it's definitely been. I'm very glad for the external voices that have been teaching me that sort of stuff to give my daughter the space to. It sounds so dumb, but just to remember that she's a little human.
Yeah.
Like treat her like a human. Like
And that
you
she's
love
the boss
them
of her
and you do
body.
anything for
Like,
them, but yeah,
yeah,
100%. I think you can forget to be like, yeah, kids have bad days too. Like I'm such a grump. I have bad days all the time, but for some reason my kids aren't allowed to have them. Like that's not
yeah.
fair. So,
Do you
I
think being
mean,
a dietitian makes that harder in a way? Like when you're feeding your own kids, do you think there's a challenge that like you kind of feel a responsibility to have them eat healthily or eat in a particular way?
I think again, being so fortunate with my exposure to food growing up, and then just how I relate to food and how I would like my clients, my adult clients, to relate to food. I've always been a all foods fit. I know it's a bit of a naff statement, but I think it's
I'm here for
true.
it.
My logo is literally a burger, so like I think that has seeped into the way I fed my kids. In that, like I know they don't need to hit 5 serves of veggies and two
Yeah.
serves of fruit every day at the moment, or every day for the rest of their life. Like I know
Yeah.
it's habits over time, and I know that their relationship with food is probably the most important thing, not their like nutritional intake. Now, obviously, like with certain medical conditions and nutrient deficiencies and things, and we're fortunate to not have to manage that sort of stuff. That's different. But I just think on like a general, I'm more interested in my kids' relationship with food than my kids' palate at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
Um, and
I agree with that.
from what I've been hearing and reading, that's I'm on the right track,
You
fortunately.
are smack bang in the middle of the right track. Yeah. And
Fist
I
pump.
think that's something that
Excellent.
gets overlooked quite a lot. Like, I do think society wise, and we'll probably get into this in the next section as well, that like we are managing nutrient intakes. People are calculating numbers around their diet. And when you do that, you lose sight of the bigger picture, right? The relationship with food, what that's going to mean for them as an adult, how free they feel around food, all of those things get caught up if you're trying to kind of maximize their nutrient intake at every meal.
100%. And I think like with anyone who's had experience with kids knows the harder you push, the harder they dig in their heels, right? So, it's much easier to, ironically, it's actually easier to kind of let them do their thing. And
Yeah.
I've definitely noticed the shift in my daughter finishing half a cookie and being like, I'm good, I'll come back to this. And me just being like, what is happening? Like what? But like proof that, but obviously, and I know everyone's journey to get to that point, and not everyone will necessarily get to that point with their kids, but moving in that direction was pretty, I was pretty chuffed.
Do you guys have any specific kind of routines or traditions that you do at mealtimes with the kids?
We've started getting them to set the table, which has been good. We've only lost 2 plates, so far so good. I know. Well, I think I'm very careful with what the 3-year-old can take over. My 3-year-old son is like, he looks like he's 4, maybe even 5. He's flipping huge. And everything they say about boys was right. I remember thinking like, nah, that's all nurture. No, not my, we won't buy him trucks or dinosaurs unless he wants them. We'll just be like, whatever he wants, he can have. And holy
very
cow.
different.
Anyway, he's so different. But yeah, so we get them to set the table. Like I said, we've started to do a lot more build your own dinners, which has been really awesome. We're trying to do one thing that you're grateful for. Go around the table and ask around that, which makes me feel a little bit sick when I say that, but it's been good.
It's really fun to do with kids.
They come up with some great ones. So that's been cool. That's sort of the main.
Yeah.
Those would be the main routines, I would say. And then, we've got some signature dishes that they always ask for. So
what's the winner?
Fish tacos. Yeah. Fish tacos is an absolute winner. I get the bird's eye lightly battered hoki. I get a bag of just a normal bag of coleslaw. Most of the time I try and get coleslaw without the sauce, and then I add my own coleslaw sauce. I throw that in the air fryer. I get mission wraps, we get lime, and I can have that on the table in literally 12 minutes. And the kids will smash 2 and make their own and ask for it almost every night. So that's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Those hoki, they're good. I love those.
Oh, they're so good. They're just the lightly battered ones are just great balance of crunch, but fish. So those are winners at the moment. And then we can still do the same. They use the tongs themselves to build their own tacos, and so
Do you guys plan your menu ahead of time, or are you on the fly kind of family?
Yeah, no, I have to. I would like to be on the fly, but it's just not doable with if I want to get everything done from a family and business sort of perspective. Especially last year, I was sort of full-time dadding last year with taxiing and lunches and all that sort of stuff. And to do that plus business plus sanity, I had to plan it out, and it's just sort of fallen into that routine.
Do you have a kind of cyclical menu, or you do it each week?
That would be smart, but I kind of just do it on the fly, to be honest. I mean, part of my job is talking to people about food all day, so there's definitely influence there where someone will go, yeah, I had a green curry last night, and my brain's like, I need green curry this week. So it's a little bit flexible on that front, but I think we've probably just got we've probably got a pool of ideas of maybe, I don't know, 15 to 20 different ones. And then also I'm fortunate in that I've got a recipe database that we use for clients with hundreds of recipes. So if I'm ever stuck, I just sort of dive into that and pull one out. But
that's us. Scanning the family mealtime recipes as well. What will we have
totally? Yeah. I try and do a few of spaghetti one week to freeze half to have a quick meal next week. I'll try and always do one of those or 2 of those meals a week. So there's a bit of, I'm not literally cooking from scratch every single night.
Yes.
But, best laid plans and all that.
Yeah, I always have great intentions. We'll see. Is there anything
looks so good on paper?
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything that your kids don't eat, will not eat, despite it being kind of offered regularly?
Mashed potato. Actually, mashed potato, roast potato. They will sometimes have hot chips, but the mashed potato or the roast potato. That's pretty much it, to be honest. My daughter doesn't like dried apricots, but obviously, we've been able to work around that.
Quite
um,
specific.
yeah, I know. It's kind of just that. There's a few like specific foods that they don't like. Specific sorts of crackers that my son likes that my daughter doesn't like, or vice versa. But yeah, where like for the most part, there's no huge food groups that they won't eat, which pretty
Do you?
fortunate with. My son is obsessed with salad, which is
Wow.
cool.
At 3, that is pretty impressive.
He's been for like at least a year. Whereas my daughter, like she'll sort of take it or leave it depending on the night. But he will. We used to in winter I'll drag the fire pit out into the backyard, and we'd always have sausages and bread and a salad and sit around the fire. And he would eat like 2 bites of his sausage and bread and then like fill up on salad, which I
Wow.
found odd. But
I mean, to be fair, that is odd. And if you are listening to this podcast thinking like,
yeah.
what magic has Jono done here? Like he just
No,
got
no.
very, very
Lotto,
nice.
100% won the lotto. I did nothing about that.
How funny. Do you think
Yeah.
the potato thing is a texture preference? Like, is it the kind of mushy, takes over your mouth,
I'd,
gets in your cheeks kind of vibe?
yeah, probably. They don't eat too much. I mean, they're obsessed with yogurt and fruit, which I don't know if that's that's not really
No, it
mushy, is
tends to
it?
be like
No.
juicier, less stodgy.
No, they don't really, other than like, I guess, bread, they don't really have too many other things that are like they like rice and pasta.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think it's a texture thing, and maybe they'll come through it and maybe they won't. Potatoes are amazing and nutritious, but there's plenty of other places they can find those nutrients.
Yeah, it definitely is a texture thing for me personally. And I
Yeah.
been like that since a child. I've gotten better
What about
over.
like a hash brown?
No, God, no, never. I just feel like, nah, there's nothing in a
I
hash
mean, I
brown.
would love to split a breakfast barbecue with you then, because
Yeah,
like
my husband does enjoy an
just
extra
get all the
hash
hash
brown
browns.
at a brunch.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Anything that you find particularly hard about food or meal times as a parent, or not really?
Oh, definitely I've just spent 30 to 45 minutes cooking, and there's the meltdown about, usually it's not fish tacos. That's the issue. Like, geez, I'm so glad I planned that meal, shopped for that meal, cooked that meal for you.
Wow.
That doesn't get easier, I don't think. You probably get better at taking deep breaths, but that's definitely the biggest one. I think also, selfishly, your enjoyment of the meal is impacted because they finish first.
Yeah.
Or they get down 100 times and you're trying to eat and you're trying to chew your meal properly and you're trying to swallow and not get indigestion and all of those sorts of things. So those are probably the two biggest things. I think definitely initially the pressure of them not finishing or not eating certain things was around, but fortunately, came across, like, again, not intending on doing a plug, but absolutely, the content coming out, it just sort of resonated with like I said, my adult approach to food. I was like, oh, this is kind of how to apply it to kids. And so it's been a while since the kids not eating certain things or not eating enough has been a problem. It definitely was at the beginning. But now it's more probably just, them melting down because that lasagna that I cooked from scratch is not good enough.
It's not fish tacos. I told you this. Look,
yeah,
mate,
I don't know what. Yeah,
you can be as lovely about me on the podcast as you like any old time. I'll invite you back if you're going to keep throwing free plugs in there. It did make me think, like, one of the things I'm so grateful for in my role is just how little mental energy or stress I have to expend thinking about feeding my kids. Like, it just doesn't worry me, stress me. And I just know so many families that just takes up so much of their brain space and so much kind of worry. Like, it just feels really, when you've got those resources, you trust them, you feel confident in what you're doing, it just takes so much of that pressure off yourself as well as your kids, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that was probably the biggest. The first shift was the pressure off me, and then very quickly realizing, oh, this is actually so much better for them too. So that's been nice. It's been very nice. And like I said, I probably didn't I didn't experience like 3 or 4 years of fighting my kids at dinner time. It was a very short blip and kind of very quickly into, well, okay, they're going to leave that. That's fine. I'll serve it up tomorrow night, and serve it with safe food, etc., etc. So, yeah,
Nailed
definitely have been very fortunate on that front.
it. Love it. All right, now we get to the kind of good bit, the juicy dessert. So when I told some friends and colleagues that you were coming on the podcast, lots of people very delighted to hear from you. Love watching your stories. Obviously, they like the singing. Personally, I love some of your song creation. But also because a lot of them said that you're someone who's not afraid to call out the rubbish that you see online. And before we started recording this, I was talking to a colleague, a very senior colleague, who was telling me about a podcast she listened to, which is by a well-known crank. And I couldn't believe that she listened to this podcast and found it helpful. And it kind of really made me think, there's so much misinformation out there. If even dietitians are struggling to tell, what's real and what's not, how can this, possibly be doable for, everybody else? And I guess we've had lots of conversations over the years about some of our frustrations about, the misinformation that we've seen shared on Instagram and just, generally in the world. That's a long introduction to this kind of topic, but what's your biggest current frustration or trend that's kind of driving you wild in the moment with frustration?
Oh boy.
There's too many to choose from.
Yeah. Do I have to get the ukulele while I answer this question, by the way, or can I
If
just?
you do not sing
talk?
an answer to this question, I will be devastated forevermore.
Oh, I'm gonna have to prepare you for some devastation. I'm sorry. I can maybe get the toy piano. Actually, it's just behind me. No, I will not do that too. No.
Actually, side question: how long does it take you to make a song and record it?
Look, I am very lazy, so I don't chip away at things. It either happens very quickly or it doesn't happen.
Yeah, okay.
So the song will be sitting half finished in my notes section so I recently did an ABBA song, which had been sitting in my notes for like 12 months. And I was like missing a line, and I was just waiting for that line to kind of come to me, and then it came to me, and I probably waited another 3 months before I recorded it. And I'm very much a one take.
Yeah, same. Who has
that'll
time
do
for
pig,
takes?
right? Yeah. So pretty quick, to be honest.
So you're a legit songwriter, like things drop into your head, little lines. I'm impressed.
Look, my past self, I was a music teacher. I was in a band. I toured a little. Yeah. So not like
toured a little.
Like, anyone can tour. You just drive to Sydney and Melbourne and stuff. And we flew to. We played a show in Perth. So
where at?
There you go.
Do you remember?
I can't even remember. It was a festival. It was like on the water, kinda. Is there like a parkland?
I mean, I asked that. I'm not a festival person, so I'd be no use to you in identifying it.
This is like over like 10 plus years ago.
Yeah, so even then I wasn't cool enough to go to festivals. So anyway, back to
I was only going if I was playing. Yes. So I'll pick two.
Please.
Well, because they are kind of overlapping a lot at the moment, and probably number one is this whole fixation on blood glucose, blood sugar, and spikes, and all of these sorts of phrases. And can I name names?
Absolutely.
Great. Okay. I try as much as possible. This is something definitely I've changed over the last little while. Shoot the message, not the messenger, right? Yeah. Like for the most part, try and attack the idea, dismantle the idea, explain why it's wrong, not necessarily be like, this person is an idiot, because that doesn't really help anyone. He said, yeah, but glucose goddess in the bin, I tell you. And she's just unfortunately spawned a whole heap of copycats, and
so many
just
copycats.
People fixated, so many copycats, just fixated on this blood glucose thing. And I get it, because it sounds so sciencey. It sounds so biohacky, data manipulation kind of, if you're a numbers person, then oh boy, do we have numbers for you. And I am a numbers person. I like, my idea of a good night is, a beer and a spreadsheet. So I get it, but geez. Anyway, I think I'm married.
There's lots of disclosures going on here. I'm impressed. Give us some context about the glucose goddess, and if somebody hasn't heard of her before, what's her general vibe?
So her focus is on the impact that meals and certain foods can have on your blood sugar after a meal, and how high that's quote unquote blood sugar spikes. And she's obsessed with stopping those spikes and bringing those spikes down, because she says that if you repeatedly spike your blood sugar, that will lead to diabetes and inflammation, and I think pretty much everything. I think at this point she's kind of linked it to and it's just not what we see in the literature. Like we know that blood glucose is important, and we know that, you know, repeatedly dramatic elevations in blood sugar over time aren't great. But we also know that if you've eaten a meal with carbohydrate in particular, your blood sugar is supposed to go up. That's what it does. And then it comes back down, and you carry on with your life, and you're totally fine.
And your body
and
uses that for fuel, and your brain, right?
100%. That's like the only fuel your brain can use is glucose, as far as I'm aware. Like maybe it can do a little bit of fatty acid, but like not much, right? So it's just it's essentially, and I think the main fear is it's an maybe not an eating disorder, but it is absolutely disordered eating in disguise, right?
Yeah.
You get people would not eat fruit or, like, you know, carbohydrate at all, or, you know, they wouldn't eat those foods unless they've had their vinegar 20 minutes before, or unless they got to eat their salad first, or they got to move afterwards. And I think the thing that frustrates me about her is, like, a lot of those things, those are legitimate strategies for certain people in specific situations, right? But she's taken that and she's manipulated that. And the best way I can think of it is she's telling everyone to take Panadol in case they get a headache, right?
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, you got a headache? Take some Panadol. And
you got a headache? That's because you didn't take your Panadol.
Yeah, exactly. Well, maybe if you had some apple cider vinegar, you'd be okay. But it just, I think it's, and a lot of people, their comeback will be like, oh, but, you know, is it really causing any harm? You know, she's getting these people to focus on that. And it is that relationship with food piece and the fear of these foods that absolutely, like, people like the glucose goddess don't deal with those people 5 years later, 10 years later, when that person hasn't eaten bread for 5 years or they don't eat bread for a few weeks and then they eat a whole loaf of sourdough because they've been restricting, and then they feel, you know, like they've failed, and there's shame and guilt, all of these really healthy emotions. And so, yeah, I think that's probably my main bugbear at the moment.
It's just the low carb diet thing packaged up in a different way.
Yeah, definitely. And everything comes in cycles, right? Like there's Atkins and there's keto. I think Glucose Goddess and her disciples are the latest kind of low carb zealots. And there'll be, I don't know, maybe in 5 years, there'll be someone else. There'll be another cycle of low carb people.
Yeah.
Just sucks.
It frustrates me because she's describing like a normal part of your body's functioning as a problem. And if you don't know that it's not a problem, like, it looks legit, right? Like, those things are happening, but actually that's what's meant to happen.
100%. We were chatting about this earlier. That's what makes people like her so dangerous, because like I made the joke before about, I had someone ask me about hydrogen water, and there's certain wellness trends where I come on. Like,
rubbish.
Why are you falling for that? That's ridiculous. You know, not that I want to necessarily blame people for falling for certain, but there are certain times where I'm like, really? Like, I've got some magic beans to sell you. But when it comes to, like, people like the Glucose Goddess, they take a pearl of truth. They take legitimate science, but then they just bend it and warp it and misrepresent it. And so I can absolutely understand why someone who hasn't spent 4.5 years studying nutrition full time, because fair enough, why they would be confused or taken in by that kind of rhetoric.
Yeah. And I feel like people like that aren't, like, abiding by moral codes. Do you know, they're not following the rules around how you can talk about these things or understanding and interpreting the science. Like, it is very cherry picked and then fear based and scaremongering, and those things, like, affect people. They make you worried about these things, and so then you change your habits from fear, and it's not even true. Like that, so frustrating.
Yeah. And just the confidence with which I think she can talk about these sorts of things when she has zero, and I say she, but just these people in this space, right? Like, it would be like me really confidently talking about, I don't know, exercise and resistance, you know, like programming and things, because I did a subject at uni and I kind of work in the health space, and it's all the same. You know, like, she's a biologist
about, like,
or something.
aerodynamics, because I went on a plane once. Like,
Why don't you? That would be a really good space for you to enter into, I think. Um,
next up.
but yeah, I feel like nutrition gets the short end of the stick though, because everyone eats, everyone has an experience with food, so everyone feels like they've got, I don't know, something to say. And I think nutrition gets regarded as a bit of a quote unquote soft science. Hence why you get lots of doctors giving recommendations, lots of personal trainers giving recommendations, and all manner of other health professionals giving nutrition advice that they absolutely should not be giving. But yeah, anyway,
So now that
my blood
now
pressure is
that's
going
your
up.
first one, I'm going to ask you. We can come back to the second one. Now that you've named her, are we going to be inundated with followers of these people questioning?
I don't know. For the most part, no, I don't think. I mean, she's got like 3.5 million followers. And anytime I will put a post up about people of that size, I get a few of their followers who tag them as if they're gonna, like, I don't know, dox me or something. Like, you clearly don't know how Instagram works. They would not even see that notification, but thanks for trying. But no, it's usually kind of the mid-sized accounts. I've occasionally had people set on me, which is, I mean, 5 years ago it probably would have destroyed me, but I'm much better at
How do you deal
caring
with it?
about important people. Look, I know it sounds very not arty farty, airy fairy. I did absolutely the first few years on Instagram. Like, I would let a post or a comment like ruin my day, and I would be
Yeah.
grumpy all night with my partner, and then I just caught myself. I'm like, you don't even know who this person is. Like, why do you? So I've just worked really hard at, like, if I don't care about that, like, I care about the people's opinions who they're close to me. My friends, my family, my clients. And outside of that, I'm really glad and happy to say I truly don't care.
Yeah.
It's not just a front, which is good, because it has meant that there has been a few times where I've got an album of saved mean comments that I'm going to do something with at some point, and I just genuinely get a bit of a chuckle out of it. So yeah, I haven't had too many terrible experiences on that front. I definitely think that I'm a I'm a young, white, middle-aged, English-speaking, tertiary-educated male. So I'm definitely kind of protected from that to a degree. I'm sure
Yeah.
I know a lot of other accounts who haven't won privilege bingo like I have, definitely get, like even just gender, right? Like, I know a lot of female dietitians cop way worse messages than I do. And I say things way worse than they do. Like, as in, my posts are a lot more inflammatory than they are. So I definitely think I'm protected a little bit in that front.
Interesting, isn't it?
So
I think personally, for a long time, tried to convince other people, like those who, like, I would argue back, trying to be professional or professional and evidence based in my answers. And I was like, actually, these people aren't looking for another way. They just want to tell me that I'm wrong. And so, like, I'm wasting my air even trying to engage with that. Like, I'm confident in the science. I'm confident in what I'm talking about. I'm not putting something out there that's doubtful. So you can actually just brush those people off. And, like, I feel a bit bad for them. Like, well, I'm really sorry that you're stuck in this wild ride of having to buy all these expensive supplements and having to, deal with all this stuff when I don't have that. So sucks to be you. That's my kind of approach now.
oh, totally. And I think it comes back to the, like, well, their opinion isn't that important to me, so I'm not going to waste my time and energy trying to convince them. Like, I'm here for the fence sitters.
Yeah.
I'm the confused people. Oh, sorry for the helicopter, everybody.
Oh, I was going to say, just hopping into your private chopper.
Just being invaded. Instagram pays pretty well. Big pharma. My big pharma check
Big
came through
food.
yesterday. So yeah,
Yeah,
big
big
food,
bread.
big grain, big
Mm.
legume. But no, I think, what's my train of thought then? What was I
Big
talking
legume.
about? No, yeah, fence sitters.
Yeah.
I'm there for the people that are genuinely curious and aren't sure and do want to learn. And absolutely happy to chat with them for ages. But yeah, I'm not going to try and talk someone down from their hill.
Yeah. And I think personally, I've seen people who have, like, learned and really believe in things that you say and other kind of credentialed people online. And I do think that does make a difference. Like, probably only in the last 5 years have we had dietitians and other health professionals really in this social media space doing cool stuff rather than just, showing up sometimes or a bit ad hoc. I feel like this is a new era for us as a bunch of professionals too. And I do think that is benefiting the world. Unfortunately, there is also a lot of these really big accounts spreading misinformation. So it's an ongoing battle. What's your other kind of current trend or current frustration that you see out there?
Personalized nutrition.
Yeah, okay. What do you
The
mean?
DNA, getting a DNA test or getting a microbiome, like a stool test or
Yeah.
a gut bacteria test, and then sending that data away and then getting a diet that is personalized to your individual genetics and DNA. And it's not that I think that concept is ridiculous. I think in, I don't actually know, 30 years, maybe 50 years, we will actually start to be able to make maybe some more specific recommendations around someone's genetics. But it's being pushed hard at the moment as this new, frontier of nutrition. You said I could name names, so Zoe, whatever they are, that company is really big on it. Of course, they're plugged in with continuous glucose monitors, so they too can talk about your glucose spikes. And it's just wild to me because we've got studies, like actual big studies, showing basically the recommendations people get from their personalized nutrition plan by sending away bodily fluids and paying $500 or whatever they pay. They don't outperform government dietary guidelines, right?
Yeah.
Like, the personalized nutrition is eat some fruit, make sure you get enough fiber, and it's like, wow, great. I'm so glad you paid so much money for that. So it frustrates me because it definitely preys on the worried well, people who are probably doing fine
Yeah.
or probably just need to eat some more fruits and vegetables, move a bit more, and obviously I know that everyone's different and the accessibility to those sorts of things is going to be different, but you certainly don't need to go get a personalized nutrition test to elevate your health.
Yeah.
And I think it just places yet another perceived barrier in the way of getting healthy. There's this, be like, oh, well, I mean, I could eat a few more fruits and vegetables, but what I really should be doing is, if I cared about my health, would be getting this personalized test so I could really, build a proper diet. I guess I'll just have to, be unhealthy.
And it also,
So,
I just wonder what they're actually personalizing to the extent. Like, there is no evidence that, what you send away in your poo when you put it in the mail to these people, like that we're actually able to manipulate numbers or data at this point, right? That if your poo has X number of this, that you should be having more of this. Like, we actually don't have that evidence. So, like, is it just made up, do you think?
I think it's based on very preliminary, very early days data that is like massively a correlation,
Yeah.
of like, oh,
Highly
well, we saw
extrapolated.
this vague relationship between these two factors, so I'm going to make a nutrition recommendation on that. Whereas
Yeah.
I am definitely, and I think a lot of us are more of like, oh, I would like to see a little bit more hard data
Yeah.
before I change a nutrition recommendation. So, it's, I don't know.
I guess it's like the
Well,
fancier version of like hair testing, right? Like that kind of had its time, and this is like the next wave, as we were kind of talking about before, everything in cycles. Like it's just
yeah,
repackaged kind of scams again and again at this point.
yeah, and it is. I think it's preying on people's feelings of inadequacy or feeling like their guilt around I should be doing more for my health, or
Yeah.
health needs to be complicated to be
Yeah.
good or better, and yeah, just and
I would
again,
really be interested to see the dropout rates in these kind of things. Like if
oh,
you
totally, yeah,
have an overhaul, a complete overhaul of your diet because of some random kind of investigation into your particular, microbiome or whatever, that to expect people to change their habits so considerably and to maintain that, like all of the evidence we have is that that doesn't work for people. Like they just can't change everything about themselves in a short period of time, and they don't need to. So it's frustrating that like people think they have to do this, and then when they fail eventually because you just can't follow somebody else's rules about eating all the time. It's just like a recipe for disaster, and it's so unfair on them.
oh, 100%. But then they can sell you the next thing, so it's all
Yeah.
right. they'll be there for you with another thing that will help you for 6 weeks. Yeah, it's the age old thing that blows my mind about diets and the diet industry in general. Is just like no one blames the diet, right? Like no
Yeah.
one would get a genetic Zoe. So I should really know how to pronounce that. And no one would do that, fall off the bandwagon, and blame the diet,
Yeah.
right? It would be their fault. It would be they couldn't stick to it. They weren't disciplined enough. They weren't whatever enough, which is wild to me. I've made a joke before of like, imagine if I bought a new vacuum and then it broke. I wouldn't be like, oh, I broke the vacuum.
Yeah, I didn't
I'm the
use it
problem.
right. It was too
Yeah,
hard
it'd
to
be like,
afford.
no, a vacuum broke. This is
Yeah.
not my problem. So, but anyhow, it's that's a whole other thing, I suppose.
I know. I just think how much like money, time, and effort people could save just by like not engaging with those kinds of people. But it's hard when they have such convincing messaging, isn't it? It's
Oh, their marketing is
a vortex.
phenomenal. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal. I mean, I study it pretty closely because like I'm a pretty big, if you can't beat them, join them. Now, I don't mean I'm coming out with a personalized nutrition course or a supplement.
I'll have to scrap the
I just,
episode, my friend.
yeah, no, and please do. But I'm more just, I do think just as this is a slight dietitian tangent, but I do think that we poo-poo like influencers in those companies. But then it's like, well, they're doing something right in
They're
terms of
working,
who they're
yeah.
reaching and how they're reaching people. Like maybe we could take a leaf out of that book, maybe not the interventions or the products, but so
Or
yeah,
the
yeah,
snakes
I think
thingy, the
that's
supplements, but yeah.
yeah, like so keep your ethics. But I think somewhere in the Venn diagram of ethical marketing and effective marketing, there is a middle ground. And so, yeah, that's what those companies kind of end up being anyway. They're just marketing machines. Like I think coming back to Glucose Goddess, she's got a new supplement out, and the ad copy and the graphic design is stunning. It's so good. It looks like an 80s magazine. I love it. It's phenomenal, and all of the copy is like all of the the words are so good, and they've linked to studies which don't support the data at all, but it doesn't matter because it looks great. So I'm
Yeah.
impressed by that aspect of it. But please don't base your health decisions on
Yeah,
a pretty
something looks
bottle.
pretty. Absolutely. Oh, it's got me all riled up. I'm gonna have to
I'm gonna have to go for a run afterwards or
pick a
something.
fight with somebody.
Yeah.
That brings us to the kind of petit fours section. So what I said that wrong, petit fours. I don't know why I said petite. Sorry. What is the
Is it petit?
weirdest thing?
I would have said petite. There you go.
I'm pretty sure it's
Cool.
petit fours.
Oh, I believe you.
Now
I
I'm like questioning my own
No.
heading, so.
You won't remember this probably, but you attacked me for I was saying thank you as one word.
Oh, mate, I remember attacking you. I brought you into
And oh, good, yeah. And ever since I'm like texting a friend, and I'll be like, oh no, thank you is 2 words. Dr. Kyla said, like still living in my head rent free. But anyhow,
I'm glad you learned from that experience and grew from it. What is the weirdest thing you've ever eaten?
goldfish.
Like straight from the bowl?
No. It was cooked. It was like I was in Indonesia and they cooked it. Like it was yeah. I was a grown up. I wasn't like a kid, fishing a goldfish out of the bowl. Yeah, that's probably the weirdest thing.
Is that something that is like regularly served in Indonesian cuisine?
I think it's reasonably. I don't know. Actually, I'm probably like sorry if I don't know. I was over there with a school trip. I was not a teacher, but like supervisor. So
Okay.
I was allowed to eat the goldfish because the kids weren't allowed to eat the goldfish because the bones are like super fine. So you got to be really careful not to like swallow it. And so they were just like, no, kids can't eat it. But yeah,
Wow. Did it taste just like fish? Like you could put it in a fish
pretty
taco?
much. Yeah, yes. It wasn't crumbed though. It wasn't lightly battered, unfortunately. But yeah, it was a bit anticlimactic because I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to try this goldfish while I'm here. That'll be great. And then I was like, oh, it's fish.
Tastes
Which
like fish.
kind of tracks, I guess.
Yeah, funny that. And finally, what's for dinner tonight in your house?
We are going to go to the beach because we recently moved close to the beach, which is exciting. And so we're going to have a barbecue. So we're going to have sausages on the barbecue, sausages in bread. And I feel it is very important to mention that it will be white bread. The bread of choice in our house is multigrain. That's what the kids have for breakfast. That's what I would have if we're having toast. But sausages in multigrain bread is a sin. It is a mortal sin. If you're having a sausage in bread, it needs to be white bread. And so we'll be having sausages with white bread, and then we'll be having what does my mother-in-law call them? Obligatory vegetables.
It's
not obligatory. It's something like, yeah, but we'll have cut up veg with dip. And the kids will be free to eat or not eat that, because that's what I've learned from Dr. Kyla.
Oh, you're the best. Speaking of the best, where can people find you? What's the best place to get in contact with you?
Instagram is where I spend too much of my time, at Jono, Jono Steedman, Steedman. Otherwise, there's a bunch of stuff on our website, which is bitemenutrition.com.au, all one word. That's about it. I don't go anywhere else because mold and TikTok scares me, and Twitter seems too serious, and I don't even know what LinkedIn is. So those are the two places.
100%. And people can see you online, yeah? You offer online consults?
Yeah. So we are only online, actually, which is pretty cool. I don't have an office. So Australia-wide, I think we've even got some New Zealand people, got some Norwegian clients, which is cool. Just sort of happened. And but no, predominantly Australia. So yeah, if you've got food problems and you're not a child, because if you're like under the age of 12, obviously don't talk to me, right? But if you have some nutritional issues that you'd like to chat to myself or the team at, hit me up on Instagram, send me an email. We can even deal with your silly daylight savings time, because you guys don't do daylight savings, do you?
We don't believe in it. Yeah, no.
Yeah, because time is time, right? You can't just change it willy-nilly.
Exactly.
Anyhow, I've come to terms with the fact that I will have to see people in those other states, and that's okay too.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
A huge thanks for tuning in and listening to my podcast. This is all brand new for me, so I'd love to hear your feedback. Give me a review or send me a DM. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And above all, I'd really love you to hit that subscribe button to keep listening. Thanks.